Welcome back. We've got 2 more series here for Gamers Without Borders today, and it's 2 more qualification matches as we move over to the world bracket. So let's bring our analysis guys on and let's talk about the bracket that we've actually got here for the most part. We're going to be focusing entirely on the upper bracket here, gentlemen. Rotterdam and Artosis joining me as we have 2 more matches to go. Oliveira versus Clem and Showtime versus Eliza. I guess I'll ask you, Roddy, about the Showtime versus Eliza match for the moment, because our first match is going to be Oliveira versus Clem. Excited to see if Showtime can continue showing the really cool form that I think he has in PvZ at the moment.
That is exciting, and it's also just cool to see him continue the run. After last weekend, we gave him a lot of props, but both series didn't go his way. He looked very solid in the PvP yesterday, and honestly, I think Showtime comes in as a pretty clear favorite over Laser, but it's always special when these two duke it out with one another, so no guarantees, but I do think it's safe to say that Showtime is a pretty clear-cut favorite.
Yeah, maybe we'll see the final game of the day, how that is going to go down. But for now, let's focus on the TVT that we have on the way, because this one's quite exciting. We have, again, the world champion, Oliveira, going up against Clem, who's playing online here. So when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, Artosis, should be a good TVT.
Well, to be honest, Oliveira more lately has been a movable object, unfortunately. But that being said, like, look, Clem is great. He's super talented and everything, but I don't super favor him in Terran versus Terran against Oliveira. Like, I think Oliveira gets very good practice in Terran versus Terran. You know, obviously he took down Maru in that finals. His Terran versus Terran looks good. I know Hero Marine kind of bashed him in 3-0, but you know, I think Oliveira has very solid Terran versus Terran. He has a lot of good ideas in it, and I don't think that Clem is going to have an easy time here. I'm slightly favoring Oliveira.
Okay, Rotterdam, any rebuttal to that?
Well, definitely to you, Kalaris. You can't be doing our boy Clem dirty like that. Make it seem like he's just an online hero. He did make it to the finals of an Home Story Cup offline, and he's had a couple of other great performances offline as well. It's mostly just Katowice, okay? There's something about Poland that doesn't quite match with Clem, but other than that, I think Clem does have good runs offline as well. I like what Dan said. For me, this is a very exciting TVT because both of these guys love to attack. And on top of that, I have to bring this up quickly. They played against each other in Katowice. And for me, it's one of the most insane TVTs I've ever seen, because imagine a game, Kalaris, where for 6 minutes straight, Clem is ahead between 30 and 50 supply. At minute 25, he's ahead 50 supply, and 26 seconds after being up 50 supply, the game is over and Oliveira wins. Like, that doesn't make any sense in professional StarCraft 2. Like, we see trolls, we see comebacks, but 26 seconds after a 50 supply deficit, Oliveira won the game.
Yeah.
An insane game, and that just makes me hungry for more.
Yeah, I remember. And actually, if you really boil it down to brass tacks here, if Oliveira doesn't win that series, he potentially doesn't go on the World Championship run, because he was 2-3 in the groups by the end of that series. So it was really down to the wire for him to even get there. That being said, Roddy, I mean, still, Clem is still extremely strong online, so I'm still going to give him that.
Oh my goodness, Kalaris, you're doing our boy dirty. He's great everywhere, okay? It's just Katowice, man. Maybe it's you, Kalaris. Whenever you're around, he just starts underperforming.
Maybe it is just me. Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but I mean, the record shows he really wins a lot online. So, you know, let's see.
That's because he's very good, Kalaris. He's very good.
Online.
Oh my god.
I'm going to stick with
your
this
parachute game, mate, immediately.
Okay, well, you know, I've got a lot to do. All right, gentlemen, it's time to head on to this best of 5. Let's go for the TVT. It's Oliveira going up against Clem.
It's the guy who's only good online versus the guy who won the World Championship. Yep, that's how we're going to put it. Clem versus Oliveira for the TVT coming up. I don't know if we ever got a defense of Clem winning that series. Kind of got lost in the memory there. But I personally favor Clem. What are you feeling, Loco?
Yeah, I think this is going to be really close. In my mind, they are very similarly ranked. And I actually think Artosis brings up a good point, right? Clem was very close to winning that series at IEM Katowice. For some reason, I couldn't think of the tournament there for a second. He was very close there at the StarCraft 2 World Championships. And if Clem would have taken that, there was a very real chance that Oliveira wouldn't even have made it out of the group, and therefore he would never have had this shot of being the world champion. So this is going to be an interesting rematch between these two. That's also the last time that they faced off against each other, and historically there's actually only 8 matches that they ever played, and they've been going back and forth. So it's honestly going to be hard to say.
I'm not sure I'd say back and forth. Clem is favored with a 6-2 match score. Not many matches, though.
Yeah,
I feel like I would
fair
expect more between them in total, just because they both play in some online stuff. But I guess Clem does play a lot more in the online Open Cups. In fact, the one that Oliveira played most recently against Clem was a Europe Open Cup. 6 months ago.
Yeah, you're actually right. So I was looking at the map score, and I think you're looking at the game score, right? So indeed, in games, apparently Clem has won 75% of the time, but in maps, he's won 56% of the time. So yeah, he's definitely slightly favored here. But in my mind, Oliveira has also really stepped it up, right? I mean, obviously last week he did have that unfortunate defeat against Hero Marine, so that kind of sucks. But yeah, in my mind, these two are going to be pretty evenly matched, I think. And since they both like being aggressive, it should be really fun.
I do think it's going to be a really fun TVT. I think stylistically they're going to give us some sparks. But I was kind of disappointed with how Oliveira was able to perform, I suppose, just because, maybe bad time, bad ping issues, so on and so forth. In that I know that he can be a very, very fast and very intimidating player when it comes to micro and just speed. And it wasn't as much than I think we've seen in the past. But that could have just been last weekend, as we were talking about. He's already looked better this weekend. But this guy in the bottom left, amazing when it comes to online stuff, and this is online stuff. It is Clem.
And his opponent up here in the top right-hand corner of Ancient Cistern. That's map number 1 in his best of 5 series. He's the world champion. He is Oliveira. Still such a beautiful run, right? I still get nerd chills just thinking of the whole tournament. Whenever I see like a recap video, we saw an interview with him earlier on in this series, or not in this series, in this tournament as well. I get chills every time. Such a beautiful story. Anyways, Clem is starting off this game with a cheeky SCV on the right side of the map. What do you think, Zombie Grub?
Well, I'm not too surprised. Clem probably you would say he's a macro player, but TVT is a matchup that demands some early game shenanigans thrown in occasionally, especially in a best of 5. And there is a somewhat decent chance that Oliveira is throwing in a shenanigan of his own, which is like a 1-Rax expand. We've seen that in the previous TVTs in this tournament, where someone basically tries to get away with it, thinking that they won't be punished. That's not the case here. Clem is the one doing something a little bit different, being aggressive. Oliveira, regular old factory expand, is technically well set up to deal with this, especially because it's not a 2-base proxy, right? But it does always come back to the control, and also just maybe a little bit of luck. Where is your first Reaper? What is your
tech lab? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but is that a tech lab right there for Clem on the proxy one? Okay, so he's
gonna get Marauders.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna step it up here.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Unless it's for Nitro packs. Can't help but bring that up because I now remember that it was a thing.
Get the Reaper speed boost inside of the factory tech lab somehow. Like, that was a thing for a little while back in Wings of Liberty.
Oh my gosh, yeah, their first response when people were like, this might be a little too powerful, and they're like, well, we'll just put it on the factory. Okay.
Go put it on the factory, yeah.
Right.
Such a weird change that was. Luckily, that's not the case anymore, and the Reaper has gone through about 5 dozen different nerfs ever since the Wings of Liberty version. But yeah, Clem is gonna get very aggressive here very soon, and the question is, does Oliveira have enough to defend this? He decides to go for the low ground command center, and I would imagine that, well, Mr. Clem is going to hit before that command center finishes up.
He should, and he should be able to stall it and perhaps even cancel it. Depends on if he thinks he can get into the main. The timing on the Hellion Scout couldn't be worse. The Marauder showing up on top of the command center before Oliveira knows that he's up against anything aggressive, anything at all. And while the swap onto a tech lab, I guess, expedites his Cyclone a little bit more than another version of this build, Oliveira is still in a lot of trouble. And Clem is just going to go for the safe call here and make sure that he cancels the command center.
Yep, he's just gonna right-click that command center here. I mean, decides to go into the main base for a little bit, but it's now low HP enough for him to always go back and get it, although I always prefer seeing them finish it off first. I get a little anxious whenever they go like 90% of the way there. Either way, though, there should be enough Marauders to close this out. There's the Cyclone coming up. Not enough room in the... okay, not enough room for the low HP Marauder there, but the CC has been cancelled, and we're going to go for one in the main base. And in the meantime, Clem is doing the same thing at home as well.
Right. Which... you know, funnily enough, really puts them quite even on the command center timing since they're both high grounding it anyways. So what does that mean in total then? Well, it does mean that Oliveira has some stronger units, just the higher tech units, right? So he already has a Cyclone, he is getting into a tank, so he'll also have a better tank count, and he already is getting a starport, which, you know, a Banshee up against Clem's Cyclone, the Banshee isn't supposed to be all that much better, but again, it comes down to positioning. Perhaps the Cyclone tries to be aggressive, and then boom, Banshee shows up in Clem's mineral line.
Yeah, no, Oliveira definitely has that tech advantage over here. Well, that alien definitely overstayed its welcome, trying to get that command center to burn down as well, but he was at like one hit away from... well, finishing off there. Clem, of course, has got the faster second barracks, so there are small deviations here. But overall, this game does feel relatively even. Now, there's the siege tank out as well here for Oliveira. At least it's finishing up right now. And as soon as that one is out, he's going to be able to start blasting away quite easily at that bunker that's currently on the low ground. Clem is going to be securing his own low ground expansion here too. And, well, Oliveira will not be too far behind.
I'm a little surprised Oliveira used his Banshee to tear down the bunker. Seemed
yeah, he had a siege tank out. He could have sieged it from a distance, but...
yeah, I guess technically, I don't know. That's just so many units that I really can't even see Clem diving his Marauders on top of a tank, you know, like if that's what he was afraid of. So now the Banshee Gambit is completely revealed. There's no way Clem should be out of position. He might still be slightly just, you know, main base into the natural or something like that, but... you know, if this Banshee gets 2 SCVs, that's not really making up for its production.
No, you're definitely right. Both players now transitioning towards the Raven as well. Maybe not quite as popular a unit as it once was in TVT, but it is still really dang good. There's that Banshee going into the opponent's natural. Okay, he's maybe trying to hit a bit of an anti-timing, right? Like if you fly in right now, there's a very small chance that you're actually going to get damage in, so maybe going in a bit later, crossing your fingers, hoping that that Cyclone is left is a better decision.
Yeah, I see what you mean. You know, no one expects the super delayed timing, but
there you go.
there's only so much a Banshee can do. Yeah. He's like, I'm good, bro. Well, the follow-up from Clem is going to be more directly into the bio, so not really a 2-1-1, but just, yeah, faster stim. Oh, there you go. Okay. 4 SCVs.
It's pretty good.
5 in total, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty good considering he had a full read on that, and he also managed to break out of that contain with that one Banshee. Maybe he could have used the siege tank, and maybe he could have sent it across. I mean, Oliveira must have been in this situation several times before. He must have run the numbers, and he realized, okay, this is actually what I want to do with that first unit. And I think that's basically the best he can hope for whenever he shows up a Banshee that early on. Either way, though, in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter all that much? As Oliveira is now ready for an attack. These Ravens, though, they both get locked onto. They have to use, oh no, an interference matrix just to stop those Cyclones from shooting. He loses one of them for essentially free.
Yeah, that was perfect for Clem, locking onto both Ravens. I mean, if he locked onto one, I guess guaranteed kill, but... yeah, still 2, forcing the interference matrix, forcing the repair, basically stopping any form of aggression in its tracks, too. Not that I truly believe Oliveira wanted to push out, but if he was planning on it, definitely not now. And Clem, he went for, as I was saying, those faster bio units, the faster sim, the faster barracks production, actually using the starport for more so getting into medevacs. He didn't go for a whole lot of Ravens. He's just evened up the Raven count, so he's no longer losing in that department, and then just straight up has faster bio. So he really gets to, I think, have more of a playground here. Oliveira playing a nice, slow, standard TVT isn't exactly bad, though, but yeah, Clem definitely happy with how this has started out.
Very brave Marine over here, scouting out exactly what's going on. Oliveira sees that this push is coming in. That being said, though, these guys are actually bypassing each other just barely here in the middle of the map. A couple of units here trailing behind will scout that there's a big move out. At the same time, there's also a lone siege tank right there trying to reinforce. Oliveira is going to be able to get his tanks in a really good position here. And how in the world is Clem going to be able to break that? There's still a couple Ravens, of course. Interference matrix is not to be underestimated, but it's not like the Raven count is incredibly high here either.
Yeah, well, he's going to try and come in from a surround. SCVs on the left, Army on the right and top side. Interference Matrix was effective before it got Interference Matrix, and Clem will clean this up. Now, he loses 19 SCVs to do so. The pull on the left might have been a little bit too quick. Maybe he could have waited. Maybe it could have been even more of a perfect surround. But the situation now is Clem needs to have time to recover economically, but he should have a slightly stronger army. So he is trying to rush across the map and get the damage done while he still has time.
Of course, pushing in Terran versus Terran is very tricky because you got to push into sieged up tanks. So even when you do have that army advantage, it can be quite difficult. Here we go, the Marines trying to save that first siege tank as well. It will go down. Clem is going to start slow pushing forward. He gets that second tank as well, and maybe his army is going to be big enough to actually just straight up win the game right here, right now. Like you said, he's forced to remake some of that economy, but if you have enough units, if you have the siege tank numbers, right, you may just be able to win the game.
I think that's the case here. Clem's going to go for the counterattack, and it is going to be supremely effective. There you have it, Clem making sure to grab up this game number one despite the dicey situation. I mean, he was caught out of position. Make no mistake, that was a mistake. Make no mistake, it was a mistake. But Clem lost track of the army. You know, he could have had a high ground. He could have, you know, been totally fine defending normally. Instead, it turned into that desperate scenario. But in TVT, if you pull those SCVs and you end up dominating the fight because of it, you do have an opportunity to get that equal damage done, or perhaps even more, which in this case, it was more. It was the game.
Yeah, so much damage coming out of the siege tanks right there. So this was a really fun action-packed game. Clem starting off with this aggression, trying to really make the difference, but in the end, the game ends up being relatively even. I wonder what these fights would have looked like, though, with one additional Raven here for Oliveira, right? Losing that one earlier to the Cyclones really was super painful, and it makes these defenses so much harder. And I mean, the offense earlier obviously would have looked a little bit better there, too. If he could have shut down some of his opponent's units, it would have been an entirely different game. Either way, Clem has enough. After losing that many SCVs, he has enough army left over, and, well, he uses it to win the game.
There's two things I want to bring up, too, for that. The first one is you're talking about the Ravens, even down to the interference matrix. Oliveira tried to interference matrix Clem's Raven, and then because just the distance, that it's not instantaneous, right? It wasn't effective. The two tanks were still disabled from Clem. So that would have been huge if he had been able to get that faster. And the second thing I want to bring up is that you might have noticed a couple of Marauders in Clem's army from earlier on, right? So they usually are really quick to being not that great in TVT because just Marines can produce so fast and they have such good DPS. Marauders don't kill Marines so much as they kill, you know, tanks. That you don't want to build Marauders in bio versus bio. However, if the Marine count's still very low, like Oliveira's was, then they did exactly what they do versus mech, which is tear down tanks really quickly, or they survive a tank shot or two, right? And that's how he was able to pick off those two tanks a bit clumsily, I suppose, but he did. And then, well, he also had those tanks behind it that would have probably sealed the deal as well.
Yeah, solid game right there overall, right? It's a good example of, I guess, Terran versus Terran in general. It can look like you're playing a macro game, and then like a minute later, the game is over, right? I feel like the other matchups in StarCraft 2 oftentimes don't really have that so much, but TVT can be very volatile. One little mistake, and immediately you get punished. I guess that goes for pretty much all the mirror matchups in particular. Either way, apparently Clem requested a quick little break right there, so even though he managed to obtain a victory, maybe he needs to just cool himself down just a bit. Sometimes that happens. So we'll be getting into game number 2 here very shortly.
Yeah, I think so. I think the game is going to be continuing on. Clem, I think, I don't know, but well, you don't do the live casting, right? You do replays for the European Open Cup. But there's always something really cute about Clem, which is that around the semifinals and finals, he always has an extended break. And I just always imagine him stuffing like an entire baguette, you know, into his like 9 p.m. his time, and he's got to eat dinner.
Like 4 croissants, there you go, let him go.
Exactly. But no, it's just noon this time around, or well, evening, I guess, for you guys. So maybe he is getting a little hungry. In the top left, hungry for victory. There's a segue. It is Clem.
And his opponent down here on the bottom right of Babylon, it is Oliveira. Yeah, I don't do as much live casting as you do, but I remember trying to do some show matches featuring Clem. And any time before 4 p.m. in France is essentially an impossibility. I don't know if it's still the case these days, because obviously he's spending his time doing other things as well. But I always thought it was kind of funny, right? Like this is breakfast hour right here for Clem, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, I have heard that as well, is that he's not one for early hours. So I guess when I assume that it's 9 p.m., so he's eating dinner, he's actually probably eating lunch.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how he lives his life. But anyways, I always think that's kind of funny, right? Like every once in a while, we're going all the way until 1 a.m. and I see somebody in the chat getting very upset, like making these pro players play at 1 in the morning. That's insane. That's where these guys peak. That's where they're generally at their strongest, right? Maybe that's like the equivalent of like early afternoon for many of these.
No, that's not incorrect. Absolutely not. I mean, as we get older, I suppose the expectation is that, and I think reality is that a lot of them do eventually start to move to more like typical hours. You know, they get girlfriends and want to, actually visit their family and weird like regular human things. But
pro gamers are human? Is that what you're suggesting right now?
I know, right? They're not just entertainment. I don't know, it's so bizarre. But I think Clem is still definitely on that teenage gamer schedule. But anyways.
Find ourselves here on Babylon. Not all too crazy of a map, of course. There's a lot of high grounds, a lot of choke points. So usually being the defender is kind of nice. But then again, it has to be clean. If you make one little mistake, the game can be over very rapidly. As now the SCV is joining in as well. Good grenade right there for Oliveira, pushing back that Reaper a little bit.
Yeah, very small micro battle that can sometimes snowball even in the big leagues, but very unlikely to. And here we go, not happening. So Oliveira is going to get a faster command center. So Clem does need to get some damage done, basically 2 or 3 SUVs, which I'm not sure that is going to be possible if Oliveira's micro is on point, although 1 SUV might already be dying. Well,
yeah, the command center has not finished yet either, so that can be a little bit annoying. Oliveira needs to finish that pretty soon, not only for the command center, but also for the supply block, right? I mean, he needs to get this command center done to make sure that he actually can continue building. Luckily, though, now the Hellion is out, the Marines are out as well, and Oliveira is going to be able to continue macroing here.
Yeah, Clem didn't actually go for those, like, 2 to 5 Reapers. He just went up to, what was it, 3? So yeah, it could have been way more aggressive, honestly. It could have been all the way up to those 5 and 3 Hellions and really trying to bust into the natural. 3 Reapers and 2 Hellions still might be a little spicy. Woodermine's going to help out. Perfectly timed, really, there, and that is going to stop Clem. Or is it? Micro? Micro's pretty good. Just kidding. Yeah. That is not going to stop Clem, and Oliveira now going to lose some more SCVs.
Yeah, that mule just landed as well. Oliveira forced to push that one away. And these all look like relatively minor traits, but at this level of play, they add up very quickly over time. We can see this snowballing out of control very rapidly. Clem certainly getting the upper hand in these traits over here. The question is, what exactly is the follow-up going to be, right? So both players right now going for the Cyclones. That's nothing all too crazy, but we also have a medevac right here for Clem. So is he going to be sending everything across the map? I think so.
Exactly what he's going to do. It's a bit ragtag, but it is going to be something you can drop out with. And Clem's already displayed he's very eager to micro. Oliveira was planning on doing something similar, but seems to at least be suspicious that his opponent is going to be coming across the map eager to do the same damage that Oliveira was looking to. As we mentioned before game 1, they do have some very similar styles, but Oliveira is now just simply out of position, so unfortunate.
Yeah, here we go. Medevac goes into the main base. This is completely unscouted. Oliveira has to respond from this right now, but these units are in the middle of the map. I mean, maybe halfway to the middle of the map. Luckily, he's got a Medevac of his own too, so he decides to boost back home. Maybe an auto turret. There we go. Would be nice to have in the mix here too. At the same time, we did have that attempted pressure at the front by Clem, but it also got shut down. 3 SCVs here in total. Although apparently Clem is not done just yet.
No, he's never going to be done, man. As long as that medevac lives. He's been almost a show-off, honestly, on some of his micro. In the early game of TVT, I think is some place where you can really showcase your micro, right? So Clem has had some difficulties in the matchup over the last, over his career, but in the last few years, he's really got it solid. I think he just simply did not really gel with it for a long time. Now it's totally fine, and you can see him having as much fun as possible when it comes to these early micro wars.
Yeah, being the aggressor usually seems to be a lot more comfortable, honestly, for both of these players. Oliveira, in my mind, plays a little bit of a Maru-esque style. At least his style kind of reminded me of that quite a bit at IAM Katowice. But yeah, Clem so far seems to be comfortable being the aggressor, right? And that's exactly how he's gone in this series as well so far, and how he's been playing, just trying to make sure he's in the driver's seat and trying to take control of the match.
Clem has taken a lead for sure in this game. He is up by 5 workers-ish, a little ahead in the army. Oliveira is
2 to 5 workers, roughly.
25. Did I say that?
No, he's got, well, a decent number at this point.
Are you going with 2 to 5? What are we doing?
Ooh,
Anyways.
Cistern here behind the tall grass here.
Yeah. Gonna be playing around this
decides to load up the medevac.
It's a bit of a stalemate because they're doing very similar builds behind this, and they still have very similar units with both of them having the medevacs, so thinking the same thing.
Yep. Well, Clem at this point realizes what he's playing against too. He's got a siege tank just rolling out of the factory. Bringing some of those units back home is going to be critical. At the same time, Clem is unloading his medevac on the other side of the map, trying to do as much damage as possible. And this is going quite well right here for the Frenchman. He's trying to target fire down the Stimpak. Nice stepping forward right there as well on that one Marine, tanking that siege tank shot to the face. But in the end, the SCVs, they do save the day.
I love it, but stop it, Clem. You're so fancy. It's like, SCVs were gonna.
You, Marine, go take the shot of the tank. It's like, oh, me, really? Okay, fine, I'll do it.
There's a Reddit meme right now where it's like, you know, the Marine inside the dropship when it's been picked up, and it's going like, oh, poor baby. And then someone responded with, but now you're gonna get sent out one at a time against the banelings because it's cost efficient for me. It's like, true. No one cares about Marines.
A siege tank right here for Clem, though, completely caught off guard, and that one is a free picking. Not bad. Okay, so Oliveira now decides to be the aggressor here. Okay, very nice interference matrices. Basically, everybody's siege tanks at this point are shut down. But is there enough available right here for Clem?
Well, there's enough for Clem. There's definitely enough for Oliveira. Clem's Vikings landing in such prime position. And then also losing the 3rd CC back at home. Clem just demolished that TVT. I mean, we were being a little jokey. We were being a little just kind of, you know, it's not high stakes yet, because as far as TVT goes, a 20 supply doesn't designate high stakes. But one thing that Oliveira has been doing these past weekends, and I guess since Katowice, is he's been going for these really aggressive move-ins and just frankly incorrectly calling it. He loses them when he's the one that forced them in the first place. And I would say that it doesn't necessarily need to force it. It's very reasonable in TVT to say, well, you know, I can't force it. Let's try and just macro out of this. And Oliveira keeps choosing the aggression.
Yep. So Clem, here we have a little replay, microing those units correctly, forcing that mule back here as well, right? It's one of those small moves, but it can add up over time. And this, well, that's the final fight. Clem just has way more stuff. And in the end of StarCraft 2, usually the guy with more stuff will win over the guy that has less stuff. SCVs even pulled away as well from their post for a little bit. They weren't needed, but it is going to seal the deal. And there we go. A quick 2-0 lead right here in this best of 5 series.
Yeah, no, Clem still looks really dominant well, Clem looks really good in TVT if you've been watching a lot of his European Open Cups, but you could, you know, and that's fair. Oh, well, it's Europeans. He plays against them all the time. Let's see something different. And Oliveira does come from more of a Korean Terran background, even though he's Chinese. He plays on the Korean server all the time. But yeah, no, Clem still looks very, very good. And Oliveira still looks shaky. He just doesn't have that same spark that, of course, he didn't have in Katowice. It's a bit too tall of an ask. Frankly, the spark he had before it either. It's just missing a little bit. So I hope he can bring it back as we head into Gresvan. Top left for Team Liquid, he is Clem.
Down here in the bottom right, we have the world champion, Oliveira. Yeah, that's always the question, right? Whenever you win a world championship, I guess in anything, I mean, I'm asking the question as if we are familiar being world champions. Yeah, you always wonder, are you going to be able to continue that streak? Are you going to be able to continue being as dominant, especially somebody like Oliveira? He's been around for a long time at this level of play, but he hasn't, well, going into IAM Katowice, he certainly wasn't one of the contenders to win the whole thing. is he going to be able to actually, continue that streak? And for a little bit there, it really did seem like he was, well, just a top-tier player now. All of a sudden, in like 2 weeks' time, he seemed to be going from, a pretty good pro gamer to one of the top-tier contenders. But in this tournament so far, I am not quite as impressed by him.
No. I once made regionals in discus. Does that, am I close to world champion?
There you go. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I've never been good at anything, Tommy Grubb. Way to rub it in.
Oh, you're great, StarCraft. Great. You're an important part of the community, Loco. Everyone would agree with that.
Thank you so much, yeah. Can I be the world champion of YouTube StarCraft content? We need to give more awards is what we need. We need an award show for very meaningless things in StarCraft so we all, can go on a little ego trip.
Yeah, I think you would get world champion for that.
Harstemans of winning it. I'm like, oh no, guys, come on. I had one thing going for me.
Oh, that jerk getting popular and stuff because he's so funny.
Anyways. Can't believe it.
So, to your actual point, right? Like, it just... We are very clear, I think it's fair, that the casters have been clear that we don't expect the Katowice run in particular. That was magical, but we are giving only the appropriate credit due to Oliveira every other time outside of Katowice, which is the credit that players would give him, which is that he's top tier, possibly even top 10 foreigner, non-Korean. And he is just not even performing up to that this particular time. So something is off, and he hasn't found the magic to bring it back. And certainly not in this TVT, not yet, as Clem does open up with aggression. The Observer desperately trying to get us to talk about the builds, did hide what he was doing. So, yeah, Oliveira is going to have lots of early game aggression to deal with.
Yep, and that seems to be exactly what Clem likes to do, right? Maybe originally he didn't really like TVT that much, but if he gets to be the aggressor in this matchup, he seems to feel quite comfortable. Now, there is already a switch over right there. We should be seeing a Cyclone here coming up for Oliveira, and that's obviously a fantastic unit defensively. So the question is, when exactly are we going to be sending these units across the map? Clem waiting one more production cycle over here. He's got a good amount of units available, and exactly that's the moment when we decide to go across. We've got about 4 or 5 Reapers right now, and then we're going to go into the double Hellions too.
Yeah. Non-meme, like it really is just the choice of TVT, right? It's very few people go 1 Reaper, 1 Hellion, although technically you can get away with that. It's often, actually upwards to 5 Reapers and 3 Hellions. No joke. In this case, that's what he's coming in with, 4 Reapers actually and 2 Hellions. But the Cyclone is usually the big bad. If you don't have enough support for it, especially a guy with Clem's micro is going to try and take that on. Unfortunately, is still losing just enough units to say, okay, I cannot tear down that Cyclone.
Yeah, small little miss micro there as well from Clem as he accidentally shot at the command center at least once, maybe twice. That does help out Oliveira quite a bit. Now the second Cyclone is going to be available too. Obviously, it's not invulnerable, and well, obviously they can't be in every place at once. Reapers managed to get into the main base. They decide to settle for the Marines right over here. One of the Cyclones will be forced right now into the main base too, but that's maybe going to open up an opportunity for those Hellions in the natural to get some work done.
Looks like it doesn't. Clem, first of all, not being able to control in 2 places at once. It's actually impossible to do it simultaneously. We just think sometimes it looks simultaneous. Didn't target fire with the Hellions anyways. And since there's only 2 of them, probably wouldn't have gotten that much. So it is just 3 SCVs. Ultimately, Clem's opener, not really all that impressive, but not terrible either. The work account's relatively even. In fact, very, very close to even. But the army counts is a little different. The army type is a little different, and that's what Oliveira is going to try and capitalize.
Both players right now getting those Ravens going once again. Such a fantastic and very flexible unit in this matchup as well, especially when they can start interference matrixing each other just to make it extra confusing. So we already saw an attempt for that as well earlier on in this series. Clem right now taking up the high ground here, so that does mean he gets the first lock on, but needs to be very careful. Oliveira flying it pretty far forward as well, and well, he just has more Cyclones right now. Siege Tank available though for Clem is going to be able to push this back.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice.
Lock on too.
Yeah.
Nice handling from Clem, honestly. He made sure to take the engagement a little farther forward to give him the time to get the tank out and sieged, also in a somewhat forward position, because the much worse scenario is Oliveira bulldozes ahead with the Cyclones. Clem pretends, is scared rather, and then Oliveira sieges up near Clem's command center. That's a much worse situation. And instead, Oliveira has to respect the micro, has to pull it back. But since he was the aggressor, he confidently took his third CC on location, and he is already turning it into an orbital.
Yep. He's definitely got a nice economy going right here. And as you already brought up, pushing into those tanks can be kind of scary, right? So you can obviously always go for like a medevac drop or something along those lines, but we're setting ourselves up for a nice little macro game. Both players transitioning towards larger armies, more economy. You can see that Oliveira is slightly ahead in every department here when it comes to the production tab at the very least. A little bit faster on the upgrade, a little bit faster on the additional barracks, a little bit faster on the command center itself as well. But yeah, pushing the advantage in TVT can be really difficult just because, well, you have to push into siege tanks. It's just not something you can easily do.
Exactly. And Oliveira keeps trying to just be the ultimate... Oh, that's going to block this command center.
On siege of shame. It's the worst feeling right there.
Yeah. But Oliveira, he's trying to push the advantages, which... Sometimes, if you read it absolutely correctly and you get the best possible engagement, you can push these relatively small advantages. But it is difficult in TVT, and Oliveira keeps trying, and then he causes kind of himself to trip. He causes his own failure sometimes, because it wasn't just last game, but last weekend on this map. He pushed into what was a clearly well-defended Terran player. Maybe it was here, I don't remember. And it just didn't work out. So that's what I'm ultimately scared of. Usually I'd be so excited to have a TVT go into the macro game, slight leads for the guy who is down 0-2. And I'm going to calling the comeback, calling the crazy TVTs of Katowice, which were all so fun. But Oliveira needs to prove it with some actually decent engagements.
Yeah, for sure. If he keeps fighting the way that he's been doing it so far in this series, and honestly in this tournament overall, Clem is likely going to be one bridge too far. Now, we do find ourselves on Gresvan, though, and this is a nice little macro map, right? Usually, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like this is the one map where we get most of the longest games. I guess there's a couple other maps, too, where that tends to happen. But Gresvan, definitely a map where you can quite easily take 5 bases as Terran. Not only can you take, well, both of those third base options, but you can also take the forward 5th, and that feels really nice and comfortable, right? So both players already adding on additional command centers here, and they're mostly just macroing up, not really even testing the waters.
It is that type of TVT, isn't it? They'll eventually get kind of maxed out, and they'll want to roam, and we'll see who chooses 8 racks versus 3 starport. Definitely heading that direction, but I think you are correct. Gresvan does seem to have the most macro games and some really fun games too. To me, it feels a lot like Eternal Empire, if anyone remembers that phase, where every Eternal Empire game was a macro game.
Yeah, no, this map actually feels pretty nice. We definitely have long macro games, but I guess that's also because this is the map where you can just quite easily expand. Anyways, both players once again moving around the map with very similar looking armies. Clem, though, so far unspotted right over there on the left side of the map. The thing is, there's already that group of Vikings. They've been going back and forth there for a long while. Well, getting a Raven here would be really nice. Hello, Oliveira. Wow, okay. That is not supposed to happen.
Nah, but it's completely understandable. Honestly, it's still somewhat common for... Oh, well, he's going to still capture these units, so that's great. I was going to say, it is common for some Terrans to still try and just blindly boost medevacs in, with the Marines inside, whereas what we're seeing is, I think, much more common nowadays. Old habits are hard to break, which is that they unload way before they're close to their opponent's base. And that did help Clem kill that Raven, but he lost out on the actual drop eventually. He is well positioned for this push. Just doesn't know it's on its way. Okay, there it is. The scan and the engagement. Oliveira is going to try and capitalize on this, and I think he should. This was actually catching Clem off guard, so this should be good for Oliveira.
Yeah, he grabbed a nice supply lead going into this particular fight as well, forcing that command center at the very least to back off while securing his own on the right side of the map too. Siege tanks in position right over here on the high ground for Clem, so pushing into this any further than he's already done is going to be difficult. But maybe, yeah, he's going to be slow pushing over here, pushes siege tanks against the wall over there, and continue this fight in the natural, and that's exactly what he decides to do. He's got a couple more medevacs, I was going to say. I believe they are loaded up with units too. Oliveira is not done just yet, and he's already got his own 4th command center up and running.
Right, Oliveira certainly pushing ahead in this TVT. Clem is not dead yet, and he is trying to now calmly take care of his natural, because this is the real threat, right? He doesn't necessarily have to take care of the tanks on the bottom if he just sieges his own. Finally, they get sieged up. Felt like it took forever. And there is the cleanup on the natural, you know, in the most important sense. The minerals are now mining again. But it took so long. SCVs died, gas geysers died, and those are still important. And Oliveira has a 40 army supply lead. Literally army supply lead, and so many extra bases.
Yeah, he's going to add a couple more command centers into the mix as well, whereas Clem is just trying to re-secure his fourth, and that really tells us the story, right? When both players are making the same units, the guy with the income advantage will end up with a lot more of them, assuming you actually spend your resources too, but I think at this level of play, that is a safe assumption to make. Clem now forced to go for that base all the way up north, whereas Oliveira is already transitioning towards the additional starports. He's going to be able to fire up 3-3 very shortly as well. This is looking really good right now for the world champ.
Absolutely. Clem is in trouble, no doubt about it, but we have seen comebacks from this stage in TVT. Okay, Oliveira going to try and break this siege up position. That's a lot of tanks fired away for Clem. Oliveira, again, trying to show off some of the aggression that Katowice rewarded him with victories after victories. This time around, it's going to be enough of a victory to say it was okay.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's more of a wash than Oliveira would have been hoping for.
Yeah, if Clem can somehow chase down some of these tanks that are still completely unprotected here in the middle of the map. Okay, apparently they are going to be driving back home right now, but that was a very dangerous move. That almost looked like one of those fights we had earlier on too, right? Where, I mean, it seemed to me like he was throwing away a lot of his units. That certainly was not what Oliveira was looking for. That was one of those pushes where you're almost aiming to win.
Yeah.
Sure, he traded out armies, right? He got some damage done, but that was exactly what Clem was hoping for there. I think that's... yeah, pretty good right here for the Frenchman. Although, that being said, though, Ollie still has that transition coming, right? There's already a fusion core. 3-3 has started up. Clem can barely afford the +3 attack. So he's still up with his back against the wall, but more fight that. And I do think Oliveira has to start being a little concerned.
Yeah, that's exactly the situation right now. If Oliveira continues trying to force the end game of TVT, then he is going to be throwing away too many units. And all it takes is one particularly bad fight for the momentum to change. And then Clem is the one controlling the map, and then maybe taking the wind out of the transition cells, right? If you're forced to be defensive, you can't just siege up those liberators offensively. They say at home, they'll hold on, but it just won't be as good as it was. So Oliveira, he wants to stay in control. He wants to keep these siege tanks up because he knows he has the killer liberators on the way. And that thankfully, this time around, he does just wait for them. And now he slow pushes Clem probably to death. Clem is on his own double starport at this point. He's going to try and catch up in the starports, but it's going to be tough.
Oh, you got the Liberator, buddy. At least the Liberator died, but at the cost of like 20-something Marines. That was certainly not worth it. The problem right here for Clem is that he doesn't have an answer for the Liberators, right? Okay, so he's got Vikings coming up, but there's already a lot of production from starports as well. From Oliveira, he's now sieging the planetary fortress, and if you glance at the minimap right now, there are so many blue bases available right now for Oliveira. Clem has decided, okay, I'm going to go for the counterattack. I'm going to try and make the best of this by going for what seems to be a bit of a base race or a flank or something along those lines, but it's a desperation move. Some of the units are caught here as well before they can even move across the map. Clem is now about, well, halfway across, so at least he's going to be able to continue over there, but there's siege tanks and Liberators waiting on the high ground.
Well, Liberators aren't necessarily all that intimidating to Mass Marine. You need a couple more tanks to really hold on, but I think at the end of the day, this is still enough, right? Like, the number of Marines, very, very low for Clem. Tanks unprotected, not nearly as good. Clem started the base trade in sight of Oliveira. That's really how this starts off as poorly as possible. If you can kind of surprise them and they go, oh, wait, you're doing this, then, you know, it's a little more hopeful. As it is, I guess technically there's some hope, but Oliveira really had a lot of time to prepare for this.
Yep. And we're once again in a base race scenario. That is base race number, I want to say 20 or so in this tournament so far. Anytime somebody is behind and they're like, okay, I can't fight your army, we've been seeing them go for a counterattack instead. But the thing is, it's an uphill battle right now for Clem. He can't break the natural expansion, or the main base rather. And, well, I mean, he can just sit in the natural, I guess. But in the end, it is indeed Oliveira who gets a point on the board. And that means we've got ourselves a series. It almost looked like it was going to be a 3-0 sweep right there for the Frenchman, but not the case.
Nope. Oliveira finally showcasing some just standard TVT, and only one misread that did not make up for the amount that he'd already gotten ahead. So that was still very important. The fact was he was ahead. He did overestimate his chances to end the game, but he was still ahead even after that. Clem really got close to prepping for the late game. He was close to having enough Vikings to win with the defender's advantage, but the Liberators came just at the right time to force him to, well, make the hard choice to go for the base trade. Again, under the scan of Oliveira, not a good start.
Yeah, brilliant game right there from Oliveira, though. Just in general, his mid to late game seems incredibly strong. Clem seems to be a little bit better in this particular series so far when it comes to that early game micro. But if Oliveira can, force the game to go the distance, he seems really quite comfortable, even though he does take some of those engagements that we, aren't convinced by. That was that medevac drop that kind of turned the tide right there for Clem. It immediately allowed Oliveira to go for a counterattack. It was really difficult now for the French Terran here to actually secure that fourth base. And in the meantime, Oliveira is taking control of all of the bases on his side of the map. And that was nice. I mean, there was that one fight, though, that he did in this choke point. I wonder if that's going to be included in the highlight as well. That one fight, it put me on edge a little bit, right? Because it felt like he was pushing for the victory. And yeah, I mean, it was mostly just a trick, mostly just a wash. It's disengagement right over here where he pushed into all of those tanks. Sure, he's got the supply lead, but this is also a moment where you can accidentally throw it all away.
Yes. You can kind of see the logic behind it. And there's no point in, well, all right, there's at least one situation which I just was bewildered by Oliveira's decision making. He literally scanned an army last weekend and just, there was no way he was going to break it. But most of the time, when you watch Oliveira try and do those busts, you can kind of see the logic behind it. In that case, I think he just didn't realize the Marines were as high a number as they were. He mostly saw just plain tanks, even though they were sieged up. But Clem did have a bit of buffer. So that explains kind of why that one wasn't as good as he was hoping for. But again, he was already so far ahead from the earlier jump on Clem's fourth base that it didn't end up mattering. Glad to see that Oliveira, can still take these TVTs, because it was honestly in question leading up to that game 3.
Yeah, some trap we sometimes see Terran players falling into is when they do get that advantage, they just stick around on the same unit composition for much longer. But Oliveira really smoothly transitioned towards that Liberator army there. He doesn't even really need that many. I mean, we didn't even see the full power of it yet, right? He had 3-3 coming, he had Liberator range coming, so it was only gonna get worse for Clem from that particular position. Either way, map 4 in this best of 5 series is gonna be on Dragon Scales. Spawning right here in the bottom right-hand corner, we have Clem.
And in the top left for DKZ, he is Oliveira.
Okay. No SCVs moving across the map just yet. Nothing all too crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see relatively normal games here to close things out. At this point, I mean, Clem technically has a little bit of wiggle room still, being 1 point ahead, but I think just playing a standard game is probably your best bet.
Clem's not really the type to try and just go crazy when he's ahead. Yeah. In fact, starting the series off with that 2 racks opener was already a little...
Yeah, that was pretty crazy, right? That's for Clem's sake, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, absolutely. For him, it's really crazy. But like I said, it's like, you kind of have to at least once, especially in a best of 5. But otherwise, I don't think, Maru might have already 2 racks Oliveira 3 times in a row, right? Like, well, I'm ahead, so I might have just trying to...
Well, I don't know if Maru is that great of an example. It seems to be a bit of a mental block right now, but... Oh, there you go. SCV's high 5 in the middle of the map.
Can you believe the lies that Maru was talking about? I don't think about Oliveira. I don't think about that Katowice run.
Yeah, and every single interview he brings him up, it's like, sure, you don't. But every single time we hear you talk about anything, it's Oliveira, but you don't think about him? I don't know, man.
Yeah, I don't know. So we're already through, of course. I guess it's possible that if Oliveira brings this back, qualifies into Gamers 8, we could see that rematch. But Clem, I'd still say, is favored, whether he chooses to play kind of standard macro or maybe mixes it up. Because there's still time to mix it up, to be clear, just because he's not proxying barracks. He could, again, go for some very dedicated early aggression. He could even go for a Marauder Hellion build, which he used to love. That used to be his go-to all-in. And then it kept failing. I think anyways, then he just stopped doing it entirely.
Okay, so let's see. What exactly are we going to do? Clem going for a small deviation, slightly faster Cyclone over here. He's also going to go for that Hellion production over here. Same thing is happening on the other side of the map, but Clem can now start pumping those units out 2 at a time. Of course, this is mostly just a stylistic change, right? It kind of depends on how aggressive you want to be. Clem is going to be able to start producing 2 of those Reapers at once, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to be sending all the units that he's got towards the other side of the map once again. I actually really do like him just, taking control of the early game. And sometimes you can even, win the game straight up if your opponent miss micros. It's just that on Dragon Skills, you have to... Okay, that was unnecessary. Okay, you had to stand in line, okay? He wasn't in the right spot. He will heal up, don't worry about it. But anyways, he's got the high ground advantage here. So whatever Clem does, Oliveira should pretty much always get the first hit in.
Right. So it seems kind of weird, right? Considering that there is that high ground situation in the natural, why once again open up with the 5 Reaper, 3 Hellions, really dedicated. But I mean, the truth is, sometimes it still works out. Sometimes, it comes down to literally whether or not the defending player is paying attention for just that half second before the attack arrives. So... yeah, it still could do it. Of course, 5 Reapers could also just jump into the main as well. But I think what maybe is also convincing Clem to continue doing this, as you said, he likes being in the driver's seat. But also that last game, he was kind of close to being able to micro against a single Cyclone. And I'm sure he would have loved to have a chance to repeat that and actually kill it. But I don't think it'll be this. This probably isn't going to work.
Yeah, there's a Widow Mine on top of that high ground already. I mean, if you just charge into that, it can be very scary. Okay, he does manage to shut that down pretty easily as he now actually dives on top of that high ground. Grenades are being thrown left, right, and center. There is that Cyclone available right now, and Oliveira following this up with Cloak as well. But if he loses the Cyclone, that would be a tremendous problem, and he gets it. Wow, okay.
Oh, okay, my bad, I casted cursed it. This is exactly what Clem wanted to do in the last game. And he literally did it and proved that he could
up a ramp. That's the worst part here, too. Yeah, this is a worse situation for him, but somehow he makes it work.
Clem. Jeez Louise. Yeah, Oliveira is taking game and damage, to be honest. He's going to clean it up, obviously, with a Banshee, but 8 SCVs, 9 SCVs, and a Mule. That is effectively game over, but Oliveira, of course, going to give it the college try. It is his last life.
Yep. No, at this point, Clem must have also seen the green light inside of the tech lab that was attached to the starport too, so this Banshee is not really going to be able to, bring much to the table anymore either. Clem has got detection, mobile detection in the form of that Raven, so this is at this point Clem's game to lose. Very tricky situation right there for Oliveira, right? Like the margin for error in those battles is just so tiny. I mean, he's going to be able to stay in this game for a while longer. Clem is not looking to close out this game anytime soon, but it is an uphill battle for sure.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's, a bit of a pro gamer call being like, it's effectively game over. Because really, if everything goes according to plan after this, then it is. Like, Clem should know that he has a substantial lead. And he can take his time and choose, the right moves. However, if you're a caster, you really have to give a lot of credit to human error. So I'm going to go ahead and just swap roles and say, yeah, it's absolutely possible Oliveira brings it back. It really is. TVT has had bigger comebacks. And 2 cloaked Banshees, obviously Clem wasn't expecting that, so already getting something done.
Okay, here we go. Yeah, the second Banshee here is maybe a little bit of a surprise. Don't lose it. Okay, he does end up losing one of them. That kind of sucks. Luckily here for Clem, he only lost a couple SCVs there, and he does shut this down relatively easily. But it does show that Oliveira is not done fighting just yet, right? He's trying to make a good game out of a bad situation. He's going to end up losing everything here. That is a little rough, but as we already pointed out, it's also difficult to actually push into that sieged up position. So, I mean, I don't think you want to move out right now, Oliveira. I hope you're not just driving straight across the map. Okay.
I think he's going to basically apply some fake pressure.
Yeah.
Puff up his feathers. Be really scared of me. Trust me, I'm scary.
There's so much energy on those Ravens here, though. They can shut this down easy peasy. Oliveira obviously trying his best. If he's going to sit here in the middle of the map, okay, I actually kind of like that. Hoping to get a couple lucky shots off. He's sitting in the tall grass here. If Clem is hunting for a Pokemon, for example, well, he's going to find a siege tank. Not entirely sure if that's what he wants, as he does get the first shot in. That's basically one tank going down right there. But here's those interference matrices, and that is rough.
A second Raven didn't get to do another interference matrix, though. I think that's what his plan was, to get shot down. But yeah, Oliveira trying to get the jump on the engagement that he figured was coming was a good idea. It was a very good idea. And, you know, he might have gotten a couple more shots. He might have killed both of his opponent's Ravens before losing his Vikings. He does eventually get the Ravens, but that was still a favorable trade for Clem overall, considering he also dealt with the Banshees very well. You know, that Cyclone loss kind of gave me some hope, and it was quickly dashed. So Clem's still up 30 supply, 12 SCVs in army, in upgrades, in production facilities. Yeah, Clem he has to be the one that messes up to actually lose this game.
Yep. Now, Oliveira is... He's got a third command center, right? He's got all the tools, technically. It's just that Clem has all the tools plus a little bit more. He's got like 20% more of what Oliveira has. It's certainly possible here for Oliveira to get back into the swing of things, but Clem is just crossing his T's and dotting his I's here, making sure that there's no hidden expansion or anything along those lines. He's even gonna see it land. Now, yeah, I guess he forgot one upgrade. So our observer here is pointing out, okay, he didn't forget, never mind. He just went for the armor upgrade first, okay? He's just pulling a Bjorn on us.
Exactly, pulling a Bjorn, who I think still has that bad habit. I want to give him some credit versus that mech game, but it was probably just as bad.
Bjorn loves going for the infantry armor over the infantry attack for no apparent reason whatsoever. Anyways, for getting an upgrade, that would be the beginning of something, right? That would be really nice for Oliveira. Here's the 4th command center coming up. The Marine this time around scouting out for siege tanks there, making sure he does not fall for the same trick twice. But Clem is ready to go for a bit of a push himself. Does he? No, he doesn't have any Ravens anymore, so that makes this fight kind of tricky, though.
It does. Ravens would probably guarantee end the fights, but without it, it's possible. It's just such a really difficult map to defend on your third base. There's so much concave opportunity. You can see that Clem, knowing he'll probably lose this tank, doesn't even, he won't even lose it. So he just knew he'd beat the opponent's tank. But he also just figures, I have so much army supply, I'm going to be allowed up this ramp no matter what you try to do, because if Oliveira had all of his tanks in one position, that's hard to break, but you can't have them all in one position. You have to have them every which way. Now Oliveira pulls them to the front, but even that looks like a pitiful army.
Yeah, and in the meantime, Clem is ready to secure his 4th base as well at the bottom of the map. I actually really love that Clem was confident enough to just sit there in the siege tank fire, knowing very well he's going to be able to kill that opponent's tank. I certainly thought that a red HP tank for the player in red would have gone down too, but he's in range of the orbital command here. Oliveira, I mean, guess what you do when you're behind? You load all units into a medevac and you take them across the map, right? I think if this was a ladder game, Oliveira probably would have GG'd out already, but he's gonna try. He wants to qualify for Gamers 8. He's gonna now boost the medevacs into the main base, but Clem is seeing this coming in from a mile away.
Yeah, Oliveira, as I said, last life, he does have the lower bracket, to be clear, guys, but last life in this best of 5 wanted to give it his all, but Clem had this locked up nice and tight. He will take the 3-1 and qualify for Gamers 8. Oliveira will move down to face, I believe, the winner of Special versus Estrella.
I will agree with you on that one. I'm not exactly sure what the next opponent is going to be, but congratulations right there for Clem, looking incredibly strong in this particular series. Maybe he never really was too fond of TVT, but today he is looking incredibly strong.
Yeah, indeed. All right, guys, TVT now over. Let's head to the desk and get on to the last match of the day.
That's right. Thank you very much, guys. In a best of 5, it's Clem winning between 2 to 5 of the matches. I had to do it. Stupid Twitch chat. We've got ourselves Rotterdam as well as Artosis here to talk about this one. Roddy, it was Clem all over. He looked great in this matchup.
Yeah, he did. I mean, if we're even killing Cyclones with Reaper Hellion in Game 4, then I think it's safe to say a lot of things went Clem's way in this series.
Yeah.
I felt like it was fun, but it obviously had more potential, right? Like, TVT can be really awesome, but a lot of the TVTs, they either get decided early on with the Reaper Hellion, or it's that first big Raven tank fight. And yeah, Game 1 and 2 literally were just over with the first big Raven tank fight. So I feel as fans, we got robbed a little bit, but I'm sure that Clem does not mind at all. And I think he's very happy to have qualified in a pretty convincing manner in the end, right? He went 5-1 this weekend.
Yeah, definitely. Looked very, very strong indeed. Especially, I mean, you start this series, Dan, he opens up with the proxy, really starts getting in Oliveira's face from the word go, and didn't really let up too much.
Yeah, this is like kind of the thing that I've noticed about Clem over the years is if he can get any sort of early damage, it feels like his win rate really goes through the roof. You know, he's so fast, his multitasking's so good, so he's just able to lean on these other players. You know, really, the only time we saw Oliveira fight back truly well is when the game went a bit longer without him being incredibly far behind. So just a little takeaway. I feel like more of his opponents in the future are going to have to be more careful in those early games.
I got to agree. He is one of the Terrans that if you do give him a slight early advantage, it's very rarely it slips out of Clem's hands here. This was one of the games that did slip out of his hands here, Roddy. Oliveira was able to fight on back, as Dan suggested. You know, once it's going to the little bit of the later stages of the game, Oliveira can find some of his footing here.
Yeah, no, just great army rotation, right? Managed to catch Clem napping a little bit, gets himself in a great spot, and from there on out, just got very far ahead. This was a somewhat questionable fight, where it's like, well, it's a good thing we were winning this game, because otherwise I don't think we would quite qualify that as a victory. But yeah, this was a fun one, well done by Oliveira. It really does seem that he's just a master of Gresvan. Every single time he plays on this map, he looks great, besides maybe the one against Gabe last week. But overall, just wasn't his series. Just he couldn't truly get it going, and as I said in the beginning of this segment, if we're even killing a Cyclone with Reaper Hellion, well, the writing is on the wall, James.
What a devastating push that was from Clem, and great micro as well, Dan, just moving that Hellion straight away as soon as he sees the Widow Mine, making sure he's not taking too much splash damage. It was perfectly executed.
Well, I think that Clem is one of the most decisive players that we have in literally all of professional StarCraft 2, which it doesn't feel like it's actually supposed to be a Terran trait as much. It feels like it should be something that like we're allotting Protoss players for, but you can really see it reflected in his play. I think that this is the great secret to his strength, is that he has that killer instinct.
And there you go, we confirm it. Clem will be going to Gamers 8 as well. Another Terran being able to etch their name on the tournament and try and find themselves towards the lion's share of $400,000. And that's going to be available over in Riyadh as we continue on after Gamers Without Borders. So a 3-1 for Clem. I guess, Roddy, kind of for a lot of people, the expected result overall here, and Oliveira is going to fall down to play against. It was either special or a stray, correct?
Yes, that's at least what the cast has said, and that's going to be such an exciting best of 5, man, because obviously the storyline, right? The world champ, he's online. We know that he's probably better offline than he is online at this point, so that's such an exciting series tomorrow, as we can take a look at that lower bracket. I truly can't wait for that. That's going to be fireworks, whether it's Australia or special. When it comes back to Clem, I think Clem just played great, man. The 2-0 over Lambo, we can't forget about that. That was very convincing.
Yeah.
That 3-1 here, I think the young Frenchman looked honestly like he belongs, Kalaris.
Oh, absolutely. Not just convincing against Lambo, dominating there. And I mean, for the most part here against Oliveira, pretty dominating as well. So Clem, what an absolute stomp for him moving through into Gamers 8. And I mean, when you look at how all the other players that are going to be going up against him here, that's a pretty decent shot, all things considered. Dan, as you say, Clem is a very decisive player. He's a guy that's able to get it done against some of the very best. So he's got a pretty decent shot over in Riyadh.
Yeah, I think he does. You know, he definitely does need to get some of that damage early on. Obviously, James, I know what's on your mind is that that's a live tournament. Can Clem actually play off?
True.
But no, I think you look at the lineup of players, and I think it was Lambo in one of the interviews. He said, you know, anyone who actually qualifies for the main event has opportunity to win it.
Yeah.
And honestly, looking through the names of the players that have qualified so far, I can't disagree with that.
It's going to be an amazing quality tournament already from the players that we've already had actually listed up there. And we have still one more to go. We are just waiting to get an interview actually with Clem here, so we're just buying a little bit of time. But next up, of course, Roddy, what did you want to say? I saw your hand.
I mean, I know that we are in the year of miracles, right, with Oliveira winning IM Katowice, but I have to admit that if Big Piotr Spirit ends up winning this tournament in Riyadh, I'd still be a little bit surprised. Like,
Okay. That would be a bit surprising, admittedly. But, you know, not out of the realms of possibility. Who knows what could actually go down there? We're just, as I say, buying time for when we actually have this interview ready to go. Next up's going to be a Laser versus Showtime. Are you two both casting that? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
So I guess I'll get your thoughts before we actually go into it, Roddy. Of course, as you know, we just have a little bit more time to wait here.
Well, I think it's going to be fun. Obviously, two players with a lot of history between each other. The one that will always stand out to me is the biggest series they've ever played in the quarterfinals of BlizzCon 2016. And that was in the era where we didn't have foreigners just making deep runs in World Championships. So the winner of that series was literally the best performing non-Korean of all time in the modern era of StarCraft 2 when a tournament is that big.
Yeah.
And Oliveira won that series 3-1. Obviously, after that, Showtime had plenty of victories over him. And I kind of think in the year 2023 here, Showtime is just playing a bit better. But Oliveira is creative, though, so he can definitely bring the fire.
Eliza has these extreme peaks in his career as well, right? Which kind of sometimes subvert the overall kind of, I guess, agreed to skill level of where he's at particular moments in time, Dan. Of course, you've seen him over in career as well, making finals when everyone's like, oh, well, Eliza's just happenstance made it into a final here. So sometimes he can play absolutely phenomenal.
You know, a laser to me, he kind of like, first off, I've been a big Showtime fan for a long time. I really appreciate his style overall. I like his macro take on most of the matchups. And I think he's a really smart guy. But a laser to me is like a tournament Zerg. This is a guy that I wouldn't bet on like as a long-term, like let's get as high MMR on the ladder as possible type of thing. But when you put him into a tournament, I feel like he's able to make tough decisions and take risks in the right points. So I always view him as a danger to everyone he plays in a tournament.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I can resonate with those thoughts. We do have Clem ready to go for the interview, so let's bring Clem on here and ask him a few questions. First things first, Clem, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Amazing. Can you hear Roddy and Dan? Do the test. Say something.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Okay, everybody can hear each other. Great. I have PTSD from last week. So congratulations, Clem. You get through here going up against Oliveira. I guess first questions first. What did you expect going up against Oliveira? Obviously, he's had a bit of a rougher time in TVT, especially against Hero Rain in the last week.
Yeah. Well, I remember playing some TVT customs against Oliveira in Katowice, and it was not going well for me. I was getting destroyed every game, but then I saw his match against Gabe, like if you, I think it was last week or the week before that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, actually, if I play my best, I definitely can do it. Because I feel like Gabe and me are pretty much the same level in TVT. So if Gabe can do it, then I can do it as well. And I also feel like I'm playing a bit better these days than a few weeks ago. So I felt fine going into this match. And also I prepared very well. So I knew I had a good chance for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, well, it certainly shone through in the game as a whole. Rotterdam, do you have a question?
Yeah, Clem, obviously, congratulations, mate. I think in the end, this was a smooth sailing weekend for you. A 2-0 over Lambo, a 3-1 Oliveira. But this was the only weekend, right? Because last weekend, obviously, you were not part of the 8 players that had a shot at qualifying. Did that make it extra nerve-wracking, or were you still pretty confident you were going to get the job done?
That definitely made it a little bit more stressful for sure, because I had like a less chances than the people who were already in the other bracket, and I was like, okay, there's still a lower bracket, so even if I mess up once, then I still have a chance. But it definitely made it more stressful to directly be in this bracket rather than first the other one. So I was definitely feeling the pressure a little bit. But yeah, I'm just happy I made it.
I can see that. And the first 2 games, I feel like they kind of played out in a somewhat similar manner. Like TVTs obviously can be very brutal, and the first times that the Ravens, the Tanks, and the Vikings clash with one another, games can end. But more often than not, it's a bit of a wash, right? Like either player A takes a lead or player B takes a minor lead. Why was it different this time? Why was it so abrupt, a game ending immediately?
I have to remember the game 1. It was the proximity.
On Ancient.
Yeah, I think that these games I just took a pretty significant lead in early game. And then, like TVT, it can snowball a lot if you take a lead very early on. Like let's say you kill a few SCVs early on, or you take a lead very early on, then you can snowball a lot. Whereas if you kill a few SCVs in the mid game with like Raven harass or whatever, then usually kind of evens out a bit at some point. But if you take a lead very early, then it snowballs so much, and that's I think both games I took a pretty big lead in early game, and then it just went my way.
All right, well, that's all for me. Obviously, congratulations once more. Can't wait to see you in Saudi Arabia. I'll pass it over to Dan.
Yeah. So, Clem, actually, we were talking about that, about how if you get a little bit of damage in the early game, it seems like you're just about unbeatable. In fact, you might be like in that way the best player in the world. I wonder, going into Gamers 8, out of the players that have already qualified, is there anyone you think that stylistically has leg up on you, like someone that you see as kind of a roadblock for your play?
I have to check who qualified, but I think the two players that are really hard for me to beat are Dark and Maru. I think apart from those two, I feel pretty good against like anyone, but these two are definitely the hardest for me, I think, out of anyone. And it also shows historically, so I would definitely say those two.
Okay. And one more question from me.
Sure.
You know, there's like some good-natured teasing going on amongst the casters about your results online versus offline. So I wonder what you think about that. Like, we haven't seen you win a big championship offline yet. What do you think's holding you back there?
I feel like I tend to get a little bit nervous when I play offline, and I feel like I never really managed to play like the way I want to play and to play like my best. But I feel like if I can manage to play like the same way I do on like offline, then I can definitely do way better for sure. But I just kind of have to fix some stuff, I think, like mentally. I think that's mostly it.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Clem. Congratulations. Looking forward to seeing you play at Gamers 8.
All right. Well, Clem, any final words, shout-outs you want to give before we let you go?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Creed, because he helped me a lot for this match, and also just in general he helps me a lot. So I played some games with him earlier today and to warm up, so it really helped a lot. So thanks to him, and also thanks to my friends watching the match. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Clem. Congratulations, and we'll see you at Gamers 8.
Thank you so much. See you.
Fantastic stuff here from Clem. Thanks, Dan, for trying to throw me under the bus. I got to dodge out of the way of that one. Jeez. But anyway.
He agreed with the assessment.
I mean, ultimately, you know, I think that once, you know, he may get over any of those hurdles that he might feel here at Rotterdam, he could become one of the most extreme forces in all of StarCraft 2, even though he's already there, effectively.
No, like, I think all the banter and jokes aside, right? Because we're obviously teasing each other a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, sure, of course, online he's been more successful than he's been offline. That's mostly because of the DreamHack Masters Europe Regionals, where he's been phenomenal. That's his stomping ground. And yes, all of that takes place online. But it's not like he's always dropped the ball in a horrible manner offline. He did make it to a final of a Home Story Cup, where he honestly made Sarah work for it. That's an accomplishment, right? Like, it's not like every guy can just show up and make it to the final of a Home Story Cup. So it's been done before, but it would obviously be fantastic for Clem if he can just shake off some of those nerves and actually always bring his A game when it matters the most in a big tournament like Katowice or maybe Gamers 8 here.
Definitely so. Let's see. I'm excited for it here as we roll towards Saudi Arabia and Riyadh as time goes on. Thank you very much, guys. It's time for a break. When we return, we have one final best of 5 here, and we're really changing gears. It's going to be a ZVP to determine another player going to Gamers 8.